Online communities can be brutal places. Rumors grow legs. Stories get twisted. People become characters, villains, in narratives that have very little to do with reality. Today, we want to talk about someone who has been stuck inside one of those narratives for years. Tiffany, also known as mood poisoning. Tiffany is a familiar face in live stream chats. She participates in a few panel discussions where she feels comfortable and tries to stay neutral. But despite that, she's one of the most misunderstood and misrepresented people in her online circle. To understand the truth behind the rumors, we approached Tiffany privately. Not to expose her, not to interrogate her, but to give her a fair chance to tell her story in her own words. Tiffany agreed, and she allowed us to view portions of her documents and screenshots. Everything we discuss here today is based on information she willingly shared with us. And yes, we verified every piece she provided. What you'll see in this video is only part of what Tiffany has endured. Her story is much bigger, too big for a single video. And to avoid confusion, we're breaking her story into multiple videos. Today we're focusing on just one of the major rumors. The money story. Part 1, the money story. Did Tiffany steal money from an elderly person? The rumor. One of the loudest accusations online claims Tiffany stole money from an elderly person. This rumor has been repeated so often that many people believe it without ever checking the facts. But the truth, the documented truth, tells a very different story. Tiffany's actual criminal record. Tiffany showed us her real criminal record. Before we go any further, we need to talk about what Tiffany was actually charged with, because this is where so many of the lies begin. People online have repeated wild claims, things about violence, elders, felonies, and other things that simply aren't true. Tiffany's real charges were for theft of movable property under $2,500. These were Class A misdemeanors, the lowest level theft charges Wisconsin has. And as you can see here, the law is clear. A Class A misdemeanor applies only to property under $2,500. It is a nonviolent offense. It does not mean the person harmed an elderly individual. Higher value thefts become felonies, but Tiffany's was nowhere near that category. This lines up exactly with Tiffany's court records. So when trolls online claim she abused an elderly person, or committed violent crimes, or stole thousands of dollars, they're ignoring the actual law and the real charges. These were low-level misdemeanors from over a decade ago, not felonies, not fraud, not exploitation, no elderly victims, no financial abuse. She was 26. She had just escaped an abusive home. She was in survival mode. Where the false elderly rumor came from. Tiffany explained that people misinterpreted her probation conditions and assumed they involved an elderly victim. That misunderstanding became the foundation of the rumor. And from there, trolls twisted it into something completely false. The truth about the elderly person. Tiffany told us something that adds even more clarity. Yes, the people she stole the items from were older, but they were wealthy business owners, not vulnerable seniors. This aligns exactly with her court record. A misdemeanor theft of removable property. Physical items, not money. The context, what Tiffany was living through. When Tiffany makes mistakes, she admits them openly. But what people don't talk about is the environment she was in at the time. She was traumatized. She was alone. She was struggling financially and emotionally. This context matters not to excuse her actions, but to explain them honestly. The restitution and tax confusion. The numbers, $11,000 or $12,000, aren't theft. These sums come from restitution and tax complications, not criminal charges. These are civil debts, not crimes. None of it supports the claim that Tiffany stole money from an elderly victim. The harassment Tiffany faces, and the money rumor is only the beginning. Tiffany has been targeted with extreme accusations, far beyond the truth. There is absolutely no factual basis for these claims. These are simply acts of cruelty, harassment designed to hurt her, and the truth being twisted. Why we're telling this story. Tiffany isn't asking people to like her. She isn't trying to erase her mistakes. She just wants the truth to be told accurately, without exaggeration, without twisting, and without hate. And the truth is simple. The rumor that she stole money from an elderly person is false. Her court record doesn't show it. Her screenshots don't support it. And none of the evidence she shared aligns with the story trolls repeat. What's coming next? This is only one chapter of Tiffany's story. There are more lies, more rumors, more misunderstandings. To keep things clear and avoid confusion, we'll continue breaking her story into separate videos, each one dealing with one rumor at a time. So if you want the truth, without the gossip, without the drama, follow along as we continue uncovering the real story behind Tiffany. Video ending segment. Does Tiffany's story match reality? Legal and factual clarity check. Before ending this video, we want to make something absolutely clear. Everything we've shared today has been independently verified, including public records, definitions of charges, and how these laws actually work in the real world. And when you compare Tiffany's explanation to how the system really functions, the pieces do line up. Here's what we confirmed. 1. Her actual charge matches her explanation. Tiffany's court record lists: misdemeanor theft of movable, removable property. That charge legally refers to taking physical items, not money, not exploiting anyone, and absolutely not harming an elderly person. What she described, grabbing physical items during a chaotic period of her life, is entirely consistent with that charge. 2. Probation conditions are often misunderstood. People have pointed to her probation terms and twisted them into accusations. But in reality, judges can add standard conditions that have nothing to do with the offense. This happens all the time. Just because the word elderly appears somewhere in a probation guideline does not mean she harmed an elderly person. Her explanation matches how probation is regularly handled. 3. She would not be eligible for benefits if this were fraud. If Tiffany had committed fraud, she would have lost access to state and federal assistance. She still receives benefits. That alone tells you her charge was not fraud and was not exploitation of any kind. 4. The W-2 tax situation is a civil issue, not criminal. The IRS and state agencies regularly investigate situations where 2 people claim the same child. Tax forms don't match, income records conflict. This leads to civil debts, not criminal cases. Tiffany described this exact process, and it matches how the IRS handles these situations. 5. Restitution amounts can be high, even for misdemeanors. Some people might question her restitution numbers. But restitution can include the value of items, claimed losses, legal fees, investigative costs. It can absolutely add up to the amounts she mentioned. This part of her story also checks out. 6. Civil warrants are not arrest warrants. This is the biggest source of confusion. Civil warrants mean you owe money, not you committed a violent crime. You're wanted for arrest. You hurt someone. Many people, including those attacking her, don't understand the difference. Her description matches how the law treats unpaid restitution or tax debt. 7. The entire story is consistent with real-world law. Every major detail she explained, the charges, the restitution, the civil warrants, the tax issues, the probation confusion, all line up with how these systems operate in the U.S. There is nothing unusual, unbelievable, or contradictory about her side of the story. Tiffany's situation is not unique, but the harassment she's endured absolutely is. She has disabilities. She has trauma. She has survived an abusive home, an abusive relationship, and years of judgment from people who never bothered to understand the truth. This video is the first step in correcting that. This is only part 1 of her story. There is much more, but it deserves to be told clearly, carefully, and one piece at a time, so nothing gets misinterpreted again. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening with empathy. More will come, but for now, this is the truth.